So thanks everyone for joining the Inflow webinar series, Troubleshooting Auto Import Errors. The agenda for today, first, we're going to do an introduction to the night audit. So first, wanted to just start with the basics, walk through what night audit means. From there, we'll touch base on segmentation, then look at how Inflow plus your night audit work together. We'll quickly look at the layout of the daily activity page just before we go into the rate code and PMS mapping pages. From there, we'll build onto this and review setting up new codes and end with a quick recap and a question and answer session. Starting out, the hotel night audit is a crucial process that takes place at the end of each day to ensure the accurate and smooth financial operations of a hotel. It typically occurs during the night shift, hence the name night audit. The process involves a series of tasks that help reconcile the day's transactions and prepare the hotel for the next day. Night audit is the process within the PMS that completes the sales for one day and rolls it to the next. Since hotels are open 24/7, night audit is the transition from closing out one day and moving to the next one. Night audit is an equation where the revenue plus taxes equal the payments plus ledger changes. The ledgers include the guest ledger for people in-house at the hotel, the direct bill or city ledger, gift certificate ledgers, and advance deposits. This process also tracks how many rooms were occupied, how many were comp or out of order, as well as no-shows. Segmentation. So most property management systems also track segmentation, which is just a distribution of room revenue. This shows where your room revenue comes from. Is it government, group, corporate, etc.? Segmentation just takes your net room revenue and it puts it into the different categories based off of the type of guest or their rate code. This is what tells you where your room revenue is coming from. Again, the reallocation of room revenue to the different room revenue segment is the segmentation page. How does Inflow work with your night audit data? So Inflow displays the night audit data within the daily activity page. Property management systems integrate with the platform to pull each value to ensure that the day is in balance. Again, revenue plus taxes equal the payments plus ledger change. The daily activity page within Inflow appears here. First is the statistics. This is where your rooms occupied, out of order, comp, and no-shows are imported into. The revenue page has the majority of the codes. This section shows all revenues, including room revenue, guest laundry, market or shop, and food and beverage. Non-revenue are for taxes. The payment section is for cash, checks, credit cards, franchise reimbursements, and any other payment method. Segmentation, again, is for the reallocation of room revenue into the different rate codes, like government, corporate, group, etc. The last part that displays a major role in this page is the ledger activity. The net change in the opening and closing balance of the ledgers is used to make sure that the daily activity is in balance. The daily activity page is set up in two steps. You have the rate code mapping and PMS mapping. Rate code mapping is where the room revenue codes are set up and mapped to a segment. Each rate code is assigned a code, a name, and a segment. You can see here how we have different rate codes, different rate names, and each of them are assigned to their applicable segmentation. You can click on one to review how all of the rate code details. The segments can be updated within this page if you need to remap it to a new segment. PMS mapping is where the remaining items within daily activity are set up. This page is super, super important. In the PMS mapping page, you can view all codes, or you can break it down by section on the top left. Viewing this page by charge codes is the typical view. This is where you can see all of the different charge codes, their item number, item name, and most importantly on the right, the chart of account that they're mapped to. This page is critical. This is where you map the taxes to the accrued sales tax accounts. This is where you map the revenue to the correct revenue accounts. These codes populate into key financial statements, like the balance sheet and the operating statement or the P&L. This is also where you map the payment codes to the correct deposit type that then routes into the bank account for the bank reconciliation. The auto import ID at the bottom is what drives the import. If the PMS codes do not have an auto import ID listed here, then that value will not import automatically. What is an auto import error? An auto import error does not mean that something's wrong, but rather a new code has been used that Inflow doesn't have a match for yet, or it doesn't know what to do with it. So either the rate code or PMS charge code hasn't even been created yet, or the auto import ID is blank. How do you know when you have an auto import error? Again, an auto import error is when a new code from daily activity has imported, but it hasn't been mapped. So again, it just doesn't know what to do with it. So when this happens, the first step is to find out what the auto import error is. Since this example is a Marriott hotel that uses the PMS FOSSI, I know that all of these are rate codes, as similar codes already are set up and tracked within the segmentation page. So like I mentioned earlier, first we need to see if these codes are already set up. So to do this, what I'm going to do is click on the rate code to get started. From here, I'm going to select the type. In this instance, because this is a rate code, which is a further breakdown of room revenue, I'm going to select the type called segmentation. Then in the mapping item dropdown, I will see the available codes. You can see that these are codes that have been created, but an auto import ID has not yet been assigned to them. So they could be used if these actually were a match to my 17 BYAY code. However, since our rate code does not appear in this list, it looks like I need to create them. To create them, I'm going to go back to my Inflow page, which is open in another tab, and under the section for daily activity, right underneath it, I'm going to click the rate code mapping. From there, it's going to show me a list of all of my available codes. This is a new code, so I need to click Add Rate Code on the top right. From here, I'm going to enter the rate code, the rate name, and assign it a segment. I can pull this information from the Auto Import Error tab that I also still have open. I'm going to use the imported value as the rate code and the rate name, which are the first two values. So you can see I've used the same code and the same name. Then I'm going to select the segment that this applies to. I'm not quite sure which one it is, so I'm going to find another rate code you can see below and use the same segment. Once I save this page, if I have multiple rate codes I want to set up, I can set up all of my necessary codes while I'm still in here. So once I'm in this page and I finish going through my list and setting up all of my different rate codes, I can then return back to my auto import errors screen. So in this instance, I've got about 7 codes I would have created. I would have done all of that in the rate code mapping page by clicking that add rate code on the top right. Once all of my rate codes are in, I can simply refresh this page. I'm done with this page because I've already set them up, so I can close this tab. When I go back to my auto import errors tab, I can just refresh just to account for any changes that I've made in my browser. Then I'm going to click on the first rate code. Again, I'm going to change that type to segmentation. These are room revenue codes. Then you can see where I have my new rate code that I just created in the prior step. So once I select that, I'll then click Save, selecting the matching rate code in the mapping drop-down menu. I'm going to continue working through this same list through the remaining rate codes until all auto import errors for rate codes are resolved. Once I finish my list and I'm completely done with it, I've done all of my mapping for my rate codes, and it's going to take me back to my daily activity page. You'll notice my auto import message did disappear and my day is now in balance. So what if the error isn't a rate code? So auto import errors will happen if a new code has been used that either isn't in Inflow yet, or if it doesn't have an auto import ID assigned to it. Let's say my county decided to charge a new sales tax. That would trigger an error code. Maybe I used an adjustment for a sundry item that I haven't used before. That would trigger an auto import error. All of these are completely fine. So in this example, I have multiple new rate codes that need to be created. From here, since these aren't rate codes, these are charge codes. These would either go into the statistics, revenue, non-revenue, or payment items or sections. So charge codes are set up for either statistics, revenue, non-revenue, or payments. So I'm going to start with the first one. So we have electronic check. So electronic check is similar to what type of payment code? I just gave away the answer. It's a payment. So electronic check would be something that would be created in the payment section. Once I created that, in the mapping item, it would show any available codes that don't have a match. Since we don't have any, what I'm going to need to do is click Add New. I'll then be at a page to create a new charge code. To do this, I'm going to fill in the item number, which can be the same code from the page behind this pop-up. So you can see that auto import ID on the far left column. That's what I will use to enter into the item number on the pop-up. This page shows the import ID as AC, which you can see I entered at the top. Then enter the item number from the previous screen, then select the deposit type at the bottom. In this example, electronic check is similar to a wire transfer. So wire transfer would be selected. If you're unsure which payment type to use, you can reach out to your corporate office or Inflow support for additional guidance. Once you're done, go ahead and select Save. Once you do that, that prior code will be removed. I just didn't actually select Save. So let's now look at a revenue code, like adjustment for market beer. Since this belongs in the revenue, because it's not taxes, nor it is a payment, this is revenue. So what I would do here is in the type, select revenue. And the mapping item, again, don't have any that's already as an option. I'm going to go ahead and select Add New. We'll use the same item number to be the same as the auto import ID shown behind. After the item number is entered, the most important part is the COA, or chart of account. You can either find the chart of account by the COA number or the chart of account name. Both of these dropdowns are the exact same, they're just sorted differently. The COA number sorts it numerically, and the COA name sorts it alphabetically. So no matter which one you choose, it will pre-select the other option. Once we've selected a chart of account, go ahead and select Save to move on to the next code. Inflow pro tip. So if you're unsure where to map a new code, go ahead and reference back to your main Inflow page and look at that PMS mapping page to find a similar code. Use that as a guide. If you're looking for a specific code, use the functions Control F on your keyboard to search for a term like market or dry cleaning. Another pro tip, typically codes are grouped together on PMS reports. If your auto import error is on the PMS reports for other payment types, your code is a payment. If your auto import error is with rate codes, it belongs in segmentation. Here's an example of what a segmentation report looks like for Fosse. Again, if I know that my rate code is on this report and all of these other codes are in segmentation, this belongs in the segmentation section. If your auto import error is with other revenues, it belongs in the revenue section. Here's an example of a trial balance for the PMS Opera. In here, you can see we have revenue, non-revenue, and payments. So depending on where your missing code is, the PMS reports are going to help you figure out what section they go in. For example, on the market beer code, if I didn't know how to set this up, this is where I mentioned earlier, I could reference the PMS mapping page, find a similar code, and use the same chart of account. So in this example, I was trying to set up adjustment market beer, wasn't quite sure what chart of account to use. I referenced back to my PMS mapping page to find a similar code, market beer. I found the chart of account that it mapped to, and that's why I set up the same adjustment code. Let's do a quick recap. So auto import errors do not mean that something is wrong. It means that there's a new piece of information that just needs to be mapped. It needs to know where to import into. Point number 2, unsure where to create a code. Reference your rate code mapping and your PMS mapping pages to find similar codes. This is going to be the best place to reference when you're setting up new codes. Finally, Inflow support is here to assist with platform-related questions. Questions related to what chart of account codes to use or should be mapped to should be sent to a corporate office or your accounting contact.